أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من اللعين الغوي الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين والحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الميامين المهديين المقتولين ولعنة الله الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من يومنا هذا إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقال الله تعالى في كتابه المجيد: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم حتى يتبين لهم أنه الحق أولم يكفي بربك أنه على كل شيء قدير. آمنا بالله صدق الله والعلي العظيم. اللهم صل على. I'm not sure if you've noticed until now, Mu'mineen, that every night I begin with an ayah of Quran. So every discussion is essentially a tafsir of the Quran, of some sort. So that's how I like to present. I like to have the ayah of the Quran be the foundation and the basis of the discussion, and then, or as a point of departure. To begin with a verse of the Quran, and then kind of go from there and then build upon, you know, the various ways, shukran jazeelan, jazakumullah khair, the various ways that we can understand that verse. So and we've been continuing along that same theme, but looking at it with different subtitles, which is what is the future of Islam in the West, right? And what are some of the things that we can do in order to maintain that future or safeguard that future? And what is the history of some of the movements or ideas that have led to the what we call the decoupling or the disattachment of insan and human beings from faith and religion, or from a kind of religion that guides them, that has an impactful role in their life. You know, for example, I'll read to you something that a colleague of mine sent me from Harvard, someone that I deeply respect. He's a professor from Harvard University in theology and Islamic studies. He's not a Muslim. And anyways, this brother sent me something not too long ago, very extremely profound. When we were talking about the future of Islam and the future of Shiism and of Christianity, right? And he said something just so profound, you know, where he told me that I'm just going to find the message here. He just to put this in context, you know, this person is a tremendous scholar. His father served under the Vatican as one of the theologians serving the Pope. They're all Ivy League educated. They're either from Princeton or Harvard, one or the other two. And the elite of the theological establishment of the Catholic Church, these are not nobodies. Okay, these are people who see the future, who understand where America has come from and where it's heading. So it's not a small kind of thing, you know. Here it is, found it. And I'm intentionally, of course, not naming him. There's a reason here. From my perspective, almost all Catholic institutions are corrupt and compromised. People who aren't generally demonized on the margins like Jones, from a PR perspective, they're toxic, and the bishops themselves will become your enemies. I think one way forward is to try to develop contacts with traditional nuns who keep the Latin Mass in the old ways. Their spirituality is still legitimate. They keep a low profile, and it's harder for the mainstream to dismiss them as extremists. So the first point is, people who have any kind of serious spirituality, even within the Christians, are considered as extremists now. I have a friend who is a member of a community in Missouri There may be others in Canada, but most Catholic institutions are not just corrupt, but pure fluff and a waste of time. Fluff. It's just cotton candy. There's nothing in it. Do you know why, my dear brothers and sisters? Because you keep reducing the price of admission, eventually it's free. And if everything is free, nobody values it. This is the reality of Christianity in America, at least of elements of Catholicism. They can't represent a tradition they themselves are cut off from. They can't represent a tradition that they themselves no longer belong to, that very same tradition. Because if you keep the fire sale going and you just keep selling everything so cheap, so cheap, so cheap, so cheap, eventually there's nothing left to sell. It's done. And yet, despite that, church attendance is at all-time low. So what has now been the use? What is the ultimate utilitarian purpose or objective or realization of selling everything so cheap? So my advice to you, brothers, I'm not from this community, I'm not from New Jersey, I don't know, I'm not American, I'm Canadian. But don't sell yourself cheap. Because in the long run, it's not going to profit. This is what has happened to others. Allah tells us, look at what has happened to others. فَاعْتَبِرُوا يَا أُولِي الْأَبْصَارِ. Oh, the people of intellect, take a lesson. If you have insight, take lessons from others. So that Muslims don't repeat the same mistakes that other people have repeated. And again, I'm not demonizing Catholic Church. They have their own issues. I'm not interested in that. We're not Christian. That's not our issue. But my point is that, and I come back to the point that I mentioned yesterday, their problems are not our problems. We don't need to onboard their baggage as Muslims. And we need to remind our children of that. That the problems that they have with their church and with their church leaders and with their pope or whatever it is, that those issues that they have come out of a European context, a European world where the vast majority of those issues don't apply in a Muslim Islamic context. I won't say all of them, the vast majority of them don't, and we don't have time to go through this. This is not a university's postgraduate, or undergraduate or graduate seminar. My point is that this colonized mentality enters our youth, and then our youth end up feeling apologetic for being Muslim, or even some of our elders, God forbid, feel apologetic for being Muslim. And then their religiosity decreases and decreases and decreases and decreases, and then they're eventually, as they say, Muslim by name. Right? Muslim by identity, but not by practice. Yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that He shows us His signs. That He says, and we shall show them our signs in the horizon and within themselves until they know that He is the truth, or that it is the truth. It has two different meanings. But one of the things that I want to explore very briefly tonight is the notion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put within each and every one of us that potential. Right? Because He says that He will show, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. Right? That we will show them our signs within themselves and in the horizons. That Allah has created us in a very specific way with certain natural laws, so to speak. Right? As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us again in Surah Al-Rum, فَقِمْ وَجْحَكَ لِلْدِينِ حَنِيفًا عفوا فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا لَا تَبْدِيلَ لِخَلْقِ اللَّهِ. That turn your face to the pure religion, to the strong religion, لِلْدِينِ حَنِيفًا, to the pure faith. That pure faith, that pure natural law, that pure, and I'm not necessarily using natural law in the legal term before anyone. I'm just using it as an expression here. That God has created you in a certain way, in a certain purpose. التي فطر الناس عليها, that He has created you in a certain way, with certain that if you stick to certain natural ways of being in this world, you'll remain on a path of purity. لا تبديل لخلق الله. And you can change it. Tabdeel doesn't mean تغيير. تغيير is different from تبديل. بدل is different from غير. بدل يبدل تبديلا versus غير يغير تغيير. There are two different words. Allah says تبديل here, meaning you can't replace it with something else. You can alter it. You can try to efface it, deface it, vandalize it. This inert nature within us. But you can't change it. لا تبديل لخلق الله. ذلك الدين القيم. This is the strongest path. There's no swerving. دين القيم. It doesn't shake. ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. But most people don't know. Most people, what is my frustration here? What I'm trying to express, mu'mineen, is if we understood or dive into the metaphysics of Islam, into the cosmology of Islam, into the deeper elements of Islamic spirituality, understand the origins of our existence, where we have come from, how Allah has patterned us, how Allah has created us, how Allah has set certain tendencies within us that are natural, and certain things that we should ideally, when we see them, be repulsed by them and say that is disgusting, that is immoral, that is inviolable, that is, that is something that is violated, something that is inviolable. It is something that when I see it, I feel perturbed by it, because there's something within us that tells us that's disgusting, that's impure, that's unnatural. لا تبديل لخلق الله. There's no changing, or rather there's no replacing the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let me give you an example here. Robert George, who I think is one of the most prominent thinkers in America today, legal thinkers. He's a McCormick Professor of Jurisprudence and Director of the James Madison Program in American Ideals and Institutions at Princeton University. Very prominent person, Harvard Law School, you name it. Extremely, one of the very important philosophers and thinkers of America today. Right? I mean, one of the reasons why I bring these things is so you don't think I'm just kind of cooking things up and just kind of presenting something that is not based on deep thinking, that is widespread understanding. He's written a book called The Clash of Orthodoxies, Law, Religion, and Morality in Crisis. Very important work. He basically says that we live in a time where religious values of the family, marriage, the sanctity of human life, these norms that human beings have lived with for thousands of years. And on the other hand, you have the orthodoxy of the secular modern nation state. And these two are clashing. Robert George argues in here that he says it is possible to argue from a logical perspective that these original values are more important and more sacred and more worthy, so to speak, than what is being promoted through radical secularism. Let me give you an example here. I don't want to belabor the point. He says, marriage for secularists is basically a conventional union. That's all it is. It's nothing more than that, right? He says that it depends on the subjective preference of partners. Even gender doesn't matter, right? Same gender, no gender, none of that really matters. But it's marked by commitments of subjective preferences of partners. It may have exclusivity or may not have exclusivity. It may be open to children, not open to children. All that matters is that it is mutually agreeable and the partners find that it is acceptable. For them, what distinguishes morally good intimacy from morally bad intimacy is the issue of consensuality only. That's it, right? And what he tries to argue is that this idea of marriage, this image of marriage and relationships, which is now the norm in the Western societies, right? I mean, I'll be speaking about it tonight, but I think, I mean, on Sunday a little bit more, and now we're around 60% of children are born out of wedlock. At least 60. In the UK, it's higher, closer to 70% are born out of wedlock. So mostly awlad zina, children from fornication. How does a society get to that point? If you look from the 60s until now, what a change this has been. And people are delaying marriage, and that's a different story. But the point is that, and Hussein Nasser points this out as well, is that because human beings have run away from their fitrah, they have run away from the natural laws that God has put within them. And they are attempting to literally deface and change the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Literally. And unless you want to say Robert George is an extremist, which I don't think he is, he's even on the council of, he's a member of the President's Council on Bioethics. I mean, unless someone wants to dismiss him as a crazy fundamentalist, I don't think so. He's a, you know. I mean, these Christians are standing up. They're speaking out. I think Muslims got to wake up. Muslims cannot be silent about all these issues. They can't be. Because at the end of the day, our Imam will look to us and say, we say, Labbaik ya Hussein. Hussein is calling out for help. And when the basic elements of our religion, basic elements of being a human, a pure human being from a religious perspective, again, I won't say pure human being, but a moral, upright human being, are just demolished, and Muslims are just silent. And letting the Christians at the front do all the heavy work. And then they want to be included in the conversation later. No, they're going to say, where were you? Chickens in the back. Don't want to say anything and just want to ride on the coattails of what other people are doing. That's not going to work. Where are the Muslim thinkers today? Or are we more busy in sectarian polemics? I'm not saying anything wrong with talking about why we are Shia. We are Shia. There's history behind that. Saqifa is what led to Karbala. Yes, there's no doubt about that. Bila shak wa ay rayb. Yes. But in the grand scheme of things, if my child can know about Saqifa, but at the end of the day not know why they're getting married, I mean, what comes before, the cart or the horse? I know this is an uncomfortable conversation sometimes with people, but it has to be had. The Christians are already doing it, and they're writing, they're publishing articles, journals, books. Look at this excellent work that Robert George has published. The Jews are writing on it. They have entire academies and institutes devoted to supporting and promoting their notions of what morality is. Muslims, with all the resources in America and Canada, what are they doing? How will they answer Allah on the Day of Judgment if a generation of youth, or part of a generation, thinks that certain kinds of relationships are okay? But hey, we had ritual X, Y, and Z. Yes, rituals should be done. I am the first one. I went last night to the matam at Masjid Ali. This is a part of the purification of our iman. We have to continue this. Iqamatul Aza is a part of our madhab. daruriyat, I would say to a certain extent, the essential elements, not in the sense of not being Shia, but the essential elements of connecting with Ahlul Bayt. But if at the end of all that, the heart has unsurety about the biggest munkar and the greatest evil, how can that same heart really, is it some kind of a self-imposed duality or schizophrenia of some sort? And I'm not mocking schizophrenia, I'm using it in an expressive way, not in a medical way. I mean, how is that possible? Campaigning for Imam Hussein and then saying, well, yeah, everyone has, we love everything. No, we don't love everything. Who said that? Where does that idea even come from? That is complete nonsense. That has no foundation. We love the things that are in line with the fitrah that Allah has put in insan. Fitratullah allati fatara nas alayha, khalas. هذا خلاصة الكلام, that's the conclusion. And if we don't like it, that's the intellectual honesty, that's the honest truth. I mean, it's and then what happens is, my dear brothers and sisters, we as communities become desensitized to these things then. And if we don't educate our children about it, and teach them about it, and remind them about it, no one else will. I mean, this is probably as far as I can go on the minbar. I can't go any further. I can't even use certain expressions. This is as far as I can go. I mean, this is the had for me. This is the limit, because we know. But what you can teach your children in your homes, and how you express to them and how you educate them about these things, and what is normal, what is nature, why has Allah created them, on what is the fitrah or the natural way of being a human being in this world. What is pure, what is tayyib, what is clean. As the Prophet has said, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, on Akhiru Zaman, he says, Zamanu sabir fihi ala dinihi mithlul qabid ala jamri bikaffihi. That during the last days, and he says it's during the last days, my dear brothers and sisters, when certain kinds of lifestyles will be seen normal by the Muslims. He says himself, ask yourself, where are you during those days? And then there will be scholars, he says, that will sell out to politicians, to the sultan, just so they could play favor with leaders of the day. And he should know that they are the munafiqun of this ummah, because they do it at the expense of what is clean and what is tayyib and what is right and what is halal and what is normal and the fitrah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says that those who hold on to faith during these times, this will be the time of the patient one, zamanu sabir. And holding on to faith will be like what? Mithlul qabid ala al-jamri bikaffihi. It'll be like holding on to a red hot coal burning through the palm of your hand. He says, Al-Islam bada'a ghariban wa sayaudu ghariban fatuba lil ghuraba. He says that Islam began estranged, with a few followers, and it will return to the sayaudu ghariban. But blessed are the estranged ones during those times, that when they look around them and they see Muslims performing acts and supporting acts that are otherwise so despicable, so impure, so filthy, coming up with weird justifications for them, dressing in certain ways, he says, that are so unnatural, He even goes into deep detail about these things. This is between Sunnis and Shias. We know this. There's not a difference. What I'm presenting is not a Sunni or Shia. This is Muslim. That they will dress in certain ways. I'm not even going to describe that. They will dress in certain ways that is so unnatural, so strange, so opposite to reality, right? As we read in the traditions, it'll be as if man is walking upon his head instead of on his feet. Qalbul haqa'iq. It'll be like realities are inversed, upside down, and you look at that and you start scratching your head. Is that real or is that false? That is the extent to where the Muslims will be. Leave aside non-Muslims. That's not the issue. Where Muslims will be. And there will even be places of worship that will entertain such things. There will be masajid that will entertain such behavior. Be sensitive to such behavior. Maybe even loving towards such behavior. And he says, check yourself at that time. Look within your heart on those days. And ask yourself, are you following the pack or are you a minority? Imam Hussein alayhi salam, where was he? 72 against how many thousands? Isn't it? And then being a Shia on top of that is not easy, is it? But we don't live for this dunya. We live for akhirah. We know that the reward with Allah is with the sabirun. And even amongst this life, there are still good things that we can enjoy. But the problem with human beings, and I'll conclude on this note here, and then we're going to speak about the sacrifice tonight, and the ultimate example of a youth. But the problem with human beings is they don't want to enjoy within the boundaries. That without religion, without deen, without madhab, without the guidance of our ulama and maraja, human beings want to go in the linsana la yatgha. Allah says this is the problem of insan in the Quran. That human beings go past, they always want to blow through the barriers, blow past the speeding limit, blow through every barrier that's in front of them. And ra'ahu istaghna, because they don't think they need Allah. They think that they're independent. They think that they're okay. They figured it all out. This is the essential problem of insan, of human being, without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and nabuwa and imama, and prophethood and imamat. Because it is these institutions that keep us between the rails. Within what is normal, natural, pure, clean, acceptable, modest. Today we cannot even speak about things like hijab sometimes, whether it be for men or for women. Or it's such a sensitive issue because everyone is so sensitive to mu'adha. How would they sit in the khutbah of Amir al-Mu'mineen? Or when Sahib al-Zaman comes, you think he's just going to be all just no mu'adha? If we look at the sermons of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, honestly in Nahjul Balagha, didn't he speak very direct to the mu'mineen? Very direct to them. Because at the end of the day, he did not want people to say that people have misunderstood his words and then gone and had a relationship with Allah or prayed to Allah or lived their life as a Muslim in a way based on an ambiguity. When it came to haqq and batil and haram and halal, Mawla Amir al-Mu'mineen was clear, crystal clear, as to what is allowed, what is not allowed, what is normal, what is abnormal, what is with Allah and what is with shaitan. And even when it came to the certain khurafat that began after the death of the Prophet, Mawla Amir al-Mu'mineen was again very clear about these things. He had to be, because history would judge him otherwise then. So we should not be offended. This is the blessing of Ahlul Bayt. In the words of one of my teachers, who so beautifully told me many years ago, Islam does not believe in political correctness. Not when it comes to halal and haram. It doesn't. We don't need to tippy-toe. And then we're always worried, oh, this one's going to get offended, this one's going to offend, this one's going to get upset, this one's going to get upset. What kind of Shia are we? Oh my God, I think we would have been thoroughly offended by Amir al-Mu'mineen. The way he used to address his khutbahs, and go, Mu'mineen, go and look at them. How directly he would speak when something was wrong in the community, how directly he would speak. How the Prophet would speak so directly. Not using foul language, not insulting, but being very direct about what a problem is, what is going on in the community, and why it is wrong. This is the sunnah of the Prophet. This is the sunnah of Amir al-Mu'mineen. This is the sunnah of Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman. As the Prophet says, Shama'iluhu shama'ili, sunnatuhu sunnati. That his characteristics are my characteristics, his sunnah is my sunnah. وَمَنْ أَنْكَرَهُ فِي غَيْبَتِهِ فَقَدْ أَنْكَرَنِي. And the one who rejects him during his occultation has rejected me. And these were the children that Amir al-Mu'mineen raised. In Nahjul Balagha, Allahu Akbar. Look how clear he is. Muhammad bin Abi Bakr, who was the stepson of Maulana Amir al-Mu'mineen, Asadullah al-Ghalib, Ali ibn Abi Talib. Muhammad bin Abi Bakr was murdered by Muawiyah, on the order of Muawiyah. For those who know, he was the governor of Egypt. Right? Before Malik al-Ashtar. Muhammad bin Abi Bakr was murdered in the terrible way. Right? He was burned alive, he was killed, and then stuffed into a dead donkey's orifice, like in the body, and then they set the donkey on fire. This is on the order of Muawiyah. Why? These are the Shabab of Banu Hashim. Last night, Mullah Rizvi gave a very nice talk about Shabab and youth at Masjid Ali. Muhammad bin Abi Bakr was a young, strong, intelligent man. He wrote a letter to Muawiyah, basically saying, Anta al-ayn ibn al-ayn. This letter is preserved in the books of Sunnis and Shias, Ansab al-Ashraf al-Baladuri, Waqatu Sifin, and on. Calling him out for his treachery and his father, and proving the wilayat and the imamat of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Knowing that he is the son of Abu Bakr, not the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen by blood. Yet the one who's the son of Abu Bakr, raised in the lap of Amir al-Mu'mineen, becomes the greatest Shia of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Look at this youth. No fear, no political correctness. And he was killed for it. He was martyred for this. And when the news came to Amir al-Mu'mineen that Muhammad has been killed, he said, عِنْدَ اللَّهِ نَحْتَسِبُ. He says that we take our grievances to Allah. كَانَ وَلَدًا نَاسِحًا وَعَامِلًا كَادِحًا وَسَيْفًا قَاطِعًا وَرُكُنًا دَافِعًا. About Muhammad bin Abi Bakr, he says that he was a true loyal son. He was my backbone. He was the sharp sword. عَامِلًا كَادِحًا. A tireless worker. He didn't fear anyone. When it came to his imam and the haqq of his imam and his stepfather, who he never called stepfather, interestingly. They don't use this language. This is again a very, this Western language. In Ahlul Bayt, they don't use this. He says, waladan li nas. He was my son. Because that was the bond they had of father and son. He was a committed son. Let me ask you all, brothers, a question tonight, because tonight is the night of the youth of Banu Hashim. How many of us are ready to sacrifice our child? I'm not saying that's for martyrdom. I'm not commanding them in the evil. I'm just saying to make some kind of a sacrifice. But on the other hand, it may affect some other aspect of their life. But you know deep down that this is what will 100% make the imam of your time happy. That he'll be radi with you. How many of us are ready for our young boys and men to step up to that plate? Are we raising our children to be the lions of Allah? To be real men like Muhammad bin Abi Bakr? Who was in the end, his actual father was not even a middle mu'mineen. So then imagine Abu Fadl al-Abbas, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein. That's Ma'asum. Then who is Abu Fadl al-Abbas? If Muhammad bin Abi Bakr could reach such a level, then what about Abu Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam? I mean, these are Shia to Amir al-Mu'mineen. You can't play with them. There's no games here. Again, there's no political correctness here. He says, دَعَوْتُهُمْ سِرًّا وَجَهْرًا. He says, these people, I invited them in secret and in private, openly and secretly. عَوْدًا وَبَدَأ. I invited them. But he says, yet they betrayed us. Over and over again, they betrayed us. You know that this death of Muhammad bin Abi Bakr truly broke the heart of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Right? Because this was a letter he wrote to Ibn Abbas, to Abdullah ibn Abbas. Right? It was in this letter to Abdullah ibn Abbas that he begins to describe his broken heart. He says, everything I have given to this ummah, everything I have given to this community, yet they have repaid me with three things. فَمِنْهُمْ الْآتِي كَارِحًا. Either they come and they join, but they're unwilling. They begrudgingly join me. مِنْهُمْ الْمُعْتَلْ كَاذِبًا. Or they have some kind of false sense of force. مُعْتَلْ كَاذِبًا. They're not really giving me their strength. They come and they join me, they stick around a little bit, and then they leave. وَمِنْهُمْ الْقَاعِدْ خَاذِلًا. You know? Or they're just an inactive trader. Every time I invite them to come and join me, these are the three kinds of people that join me. And then my son is left at the end of that line, and the result of that is him being burned alive. This was the heart of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says, had it not been for my desire to meet my enemy in the pursuit of martyrdom, I would have loved to not remain with these people in this world for a single day. As'alullah ta'ala an yaj'ala li minhum farajan ajila. He says, oh Allah, give me quick relief from these munafiqun, from these hypocrites that are always saying, Ali, 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 wa mu'tal kadhiban, or qa'id khadila. But they're either a traitor, or they're lazy, or they're a hypocrite. But yet they say, Ali, Ali, Ali. Haydar, Haydar, Haydar. This is Nahj al-Balagha. I think the kalam is very direct. He doesn't mince his words about how he feels. This is Amir al-Mu'mineen. Because when it comes to the haqq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? لا يتخذوا في الله لومة لائم. When it comes to the haqq of Allah, it doesn't matter. And now Hussein is left alone with his family. Banu Hashim is now left. The swords are being sharpened for war. And what do they hear? Al-Atash, Al-Atash, Al-Atash. Thirst, thirst, and thirst. And now a father, once again, the son of Ali, had to make that tough choice. Just as Ali made the choice, knowing what would happen to Muhammad bin Abi Bakr, knowing that Muhammad bin Abi Bakr would take that stand, knowing what would happen to his son, yet he allowed his son to go. هذا Shia. This is wilayah. Khalisa, pure. And now Ali Akbar, the older brother of Imam Zain al-Abidin, had Hamza's might, Amir al-Mu'mineen's bravery, the Prophet's beauty, Hussein's patience. What a combination. I mean, he was the perfect, like, insan al-kamil, complete human being. He represented the pride of Ahlul Bayt. Abu Abdullah took so much pride in this child that people used to come to see him to be reminded of Rasulullah. In fact, Umar ibn Sa'd offered Ali Akbar protection and aman because his mother Layla was related to Banu Umayyah. And the Imam says, Salamu alayka ya awwala qatil min nasli khayri salim. The Imam of the time says that this was the first one to go to fight, the first one to die. And when he came to Imam al-Hussein to ask for permission, Imam did not hesitate. Imam allowed him. Look again, Mu'mineen, look at the strength of Hussein, the shuja'at of Hussein, the shuja'at of Ali Akbar. He raised that son ready for the day that this dunya is fani. It's not baqi. This dunya will end. These youths were ready. These are Shia. No hesitation, no crying, nothing. Ready to go. Imam Hussein knew he could not face Allah knowing that Qasim would be sacrificed. Others would be sacrificed, but his Ali Akbar would not be sacrificed. Imam knew this. Ali Akbar looked at his father as his father's eyes filled with tears. أرخى عينيه بالدموع, with a broken heart, محترقا قلبه. And he says, Wallah, I swear that to these people, that this lad resembles most that of Rasulullah. فقد برز إليهم غلام أشبح الناس خلقا وخلقا ومنطقا برسولك محمد. That nobody resembles more the Prophet than him. That whenever we long to see your face, Ya Rasulullah, we would look at him. فَاللَّهُمَّ فَمْنَعْهُمْ بَرَكَاتِ الْأَرْضِ. So, oh Allah, deny all these mal'uneen, these cursed people, the blessings in the earth. Now this is the la'an of Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein, it's not only love here. He sends la'nat on them. Deny them every drop of Allah's blessings in the earth. Oh Allah, tear them up, all of them. Let them never be happy again, for they invited us, and now they turn to kill us. For they had called upon us as if they would help us, and now they have turned to kill us. This dua shook the earth, mu'mineen. This is a khiyana experience of Amir al-Mu'mineen. This is the betrayal felt by Amir al-Mu'mineen, of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Irham ala ghurbatina. The women began to scream, have mercy on our loneliness, have mercy on our loneliness. The women formed a circle around Ali al-Akbar. They wouldn't let him go. They began to cry over and over and over again. They said that we are lonely without you, we are lonely without you, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. He was fed by them. He was nurtured by them. He was raised by these women. They said, La tasta'jil, la tasta'jil. Don't rush, my son, into battle. The women could not stand losing him. But Hussein had to dress his son up for war. He put on the armor and the helmet of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Look how beautiful this is. The armor and the helmet of Maulana Amir al-Mu'mineen, Asadullah. Ali al-Akbar is wearing this this armor, as he's going out to battle, as Sayyid Bahr al-Ulum tells us, Ali Akbar goes forth to fight now. He says, I am Ali, the son of Hussein. We are the chosen ones from the Prophet. By Allah, we shall never be ruled by the illegitimate ruler. He is reciting this poetry. Abu Abdullah began to cry. فَبَكَ al-Hussein. Hussein is looking at his son Ali al-Akbar. Hussein is beginning to cry. He shouted at Umar ibn Sa'ad, what is wrong with you? May Allah cut off your lineage. May Allah cut off your lineage as you have cut off mine. May Allah send someone to slay you in your own bed. Hussein then recited the verse, Inna Allah istafa Adama wa Nuha wa ala Ibrahim wa ala Imran ala al-alameen. Dhurriyata ba'duha min ba'din wallahu sami'un alim. He begins to recite these important verses about the imamah from the Quran. Surely Allah has chosen Adam. Allah has chosen Nuh, the family of Ibrahim, the family of Imran over all of the world, the family succeeding each other. Ali Akbar continued to fight from right flank to left flank. He killed 120 men. By now the thirst was killing him and he was exhausted. He rides back to his father. He rides back to his father and he's covered in wounds. أصابته جراحات كثيرة. He's covered in wounds. He turns to his father. يا أبا العطش قد قتلني. He says, oh my father, the thirst is killing me. وثقل الحديد, and the weight of this iron is weighing me down. Is there any way that I can get to water? For halil shurbatin min ma'in sabil. Is there any sabil to water now? The thirst of his son is killing him. Hussein looks at him. Hussein looks at him, and now what happens? Hussein looks at him. فَبَكَّ الْحُسَيْنُ بُكَاءً شَدِيدًا. Hussein begins to cry looking at his son. What was Hussein to do? He takes his ring off. He puts it into the mouth of his son. He says, Bunayya, hati lisanik. Give me your tongue, oh my son. Why? Allah only knows. Hussein takes his ring off. He puts the ring into the mouth of his son. Take this ring and put it into your mouth. Ali Akbar charges out once again like a lion. His father is trying best to keep watch over him. With every blow, he is waiting to see what will transpire. Abu Abdullah is watching his son fight. He says, war has confronted us with its realities. War has manifested after its implications. Ali Akbar fought 200 men. They then fired an arrow. Shall I narrate where it landed? It landed in the throat of Ali Akbar alayhi salam. The arrow lands into the throat of Ali Akbar. He puts his hand over his throat as the blood is coming out of his hands. Then Munqidh bin Murra al-Abdi hit the young lion of Ali over his head. ثُمَّ تَعَنُوا بِالرُّمَّ فِي ظَهْرِهِ. And then they stabbed him into his back. And then they began hitting him with swords. Ya Allah, he began to get hit by all sides. Mu'mineen ya Sadara Hussein. And then he says, Ya Bata, Ya Bata, Ya Bata, alaykum minni salam, Ya Bata. Ya Bata, hada jaddi Rasulullah. He says, oh my father, this is my grandfather Rasulullah. He is giving me some water. This is my grandfather Rasulullah. As they were showering him with arrows, Hussein races out into the battlefield. فَقَطُعُوهُ بِسْيَافِهِمْ. Irban, Irban. They begin cutting him to pieces. Hussein cries out, Waladi Ali, Waladi Ali. Why, Mama? Why, Abdullah? Qatal Allah qawma qataluk. May Allah kill those who killed you. Brothers, this is the rage of Hussein ibn Ali. Ala dunya ba'da kalafa. He says this world has no value after you. How dare they defy the Rahman? How dare they defy the sanctity of Rasulullah? Hard it is upon your grandfather and father that they could not respond to you. Brothers, think of the helplessness of Imam Hussein. Abu Mikhnaf relates from Hamid bin Muslim that a woman now came out of the tent, shining like the sun, And she began to say, Wa Habiba, Wa Thamarat Fuada, Wa Nur Aina. She begins to scream. I asked, who is this woman? He said, Hadihi Zainab bint Ali alayhi salam. This is Zainab coming out of the tent. She's just screaming, Wa Habiba, Wa Ghurwata, Wa Aliya, over and over again. And then the riwayah said Zainab throws herself onto the body of Ali al-Akbar. Hussein takes Zainab's hand. Wa Ghariba, Wa Imama. Brothers, take your hearts to Hussein ibn Ali. Assalamu alayka ya Gharib al-Ghuraba. He's holding the hand of Zainab now. What is he to do? He asks the two young boys to bring the body of Ali Akbar to the tent. And then he takes his head, أخذ رأسه وضعه في هجره. And he takes the head of his son and he puts it in his son's lap. He begins wiping the blood from Ali Akbar's face. He says, لعن الله قاتلك. May Allah kill your killer. May Allah lanat be on your killer. Ya waladi, you are now relieved of the gham and the hum of this dunya, the distress of this dunya. Sakina then comes to the tent. What shall we say about this now? Sakina bint al-Hussein alayhi salam. Kharajat min al-fustat. She comes out from the tent to Hussein. She says, oh my father, Aina akhi Ali? Where is my brother Ali alayhi salam? Where is he? Hussein at this moment is silent. He has no jawab. Imagine Hussein ibn Ali, Imam al-Alameen, the Imam of the universe, has no jawab for Sukaina alayhi salam. He looks at her. He has a tear in her eye. Sukaina is about to run out of the tent. He grabs her hand. He puts her in his lap. And he says, Inna lillahi. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un.